Hello and welcome to DynaVap Live. I'm Retail Josh.
I'm George.
I'm Chris.
And this is Chris Casey from Compliant Technology, and today we are going to be discussing glass, primarily the Galaxy glass. We have stems and bodies on the site, but before we get into that, let's do a couple shout-outs from the chat. We have Nick Morris from London, England.
Oh, Single Jingler from Utah. That's kind of a fun one.
Inferno from Oregon.
Operator from New Jersey.
Ray Lunsford from Brenham, Texas.
Nice. Troy from New Mexico.
I got Sean Lucas from Calgary, Alberta.
And Sean O'Connor from Ireland, right?
And then we got Ubar Dog from the southeast of the UK.
Yeah. Cool.
And yeah, so a lot of new international viewers that we see in there. Hope you appreciate this new time. Let us know what you think of the new time in the chat and get those questions in there. We're going to be doing some exciting giveaways today. We're going to be giving away a Galaxy Glass stem, a Galaxy Glass body, as well as a very limited Galaxy Glass body, but instead of being fumed with silver, it's fumed with gold. And if you haven't subscribed already to the channel, be sure to do so and ring the bell so you're notified whenever we release new content. And George, I think we should thank the Dynaverse.
I think we should. We wouldn't be anywhere near what we are if it weren't for the awesome communities that are springing up around some of the cool things that we've been doing. So thank you to the FC Forum.
Yeah, and then we have r/DynaVap, r/Vaporence.
And we got Vapor Asylum.
Yep. It's all that community love that we get from you guys that really allowed us to be where we are today. That and the different retailers out there that support our brand, get our product into everyone's hands. They can go into their local shop, pick up our product without having to wait for shipping. So we really want to thank all of you out there. And for those of you who haven't tuned in before, or you may have tuned in before, every week that we do a DynaVap Live, we update the community tab with a new question. This week's question was, what's your favorite type of glass piece? The options were mini rig, bubbler, stem, water piece, and then other. With water piece being the clear winner here, but I'm going to ask Chris, what is your favorite type of glass piece? Because you are going to be looking at it from, I imagine, a maker point of view as well as a use point of view.
Right, and I really like technologically functional items. So I would probably pick a mini recycler that's got an internal recycler. So you've got a lot of turbulence in action and cooling action.
So you're an environmental kind of guy. You like to recycle.
Correct. Recycling is very important.
And then what about you, George? What's your favorite type of glass?
My favorite kind of glass is the unbroken kind. It's really difficult to use broken glass.
So you're not giving any glass to Pranav?
That's not necessarily the case. In fact, I see one of the questions that someone said if they can drop the glass, and absolutely you can drop the glass. You know, aren't you making these out of unbreakable Tesla glass?
I wish. I mean, we are getting it from the same factory.
Okay. But in general, glass is glass.
Right.
You drop it on a hard surface, and you run the risk of it no longer being one piece.
Right. And these have been annealed really well, so if something's going to break, this is the least likely.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, Chris. So annealed really well. For people that aren't familiar with glass, what does annealing actually mean?
Okay, so when I work one of these pieces, and I'll heat like in this area, but this area and this area are cool, the area in between those, the transitional point between the two temperatures, the glass gets, on a molecular level, it gets unstable. Or
a little bit stressed.
Stressed, but it moves all the molecules out of the way.
Sure.
And so when you anneal it and heat up, which means you heat the entire piece evenly to the point at which stress is removed, which is 1,050 degrees in Pyrex, which is what these are all made of. So it removes all that stress. They sit at that temperature for an hour and then cool down at, it's supposed to be 3 degrees, but we do 2.5 degrees a minute.
Okay. So very slow temperature
very
drop.
Very slow, and that keeps the chemical structure perfect. So that when it cools down, there's no anomaly in the structure of the glass itself.
Okay.
Which makes it really strong. And Pyrex is really shock resistant. So it will take an impact. The only thing you don't want to drop this on is like concrete.
really hard surfaces.
Really hard surfaces.
Yeah, if it hits it in the right point, like if you've ever dropped like a phone screen or something, if it just gets dropped at the exact right weak point,
Right,
it's
that
gonna
right little sharp point that it'll
yeah,
hit.
and it'll just shatter.
Right.
Which no one
But for
enjoys.
the most part, I probably drop mine once a day. And granted, I've got a wood floor in my studio, but I literally probably drop it once a day or knock it off the desk, or they like to hit the floor in the studio.
And now, since we're kind of getting into the main topic for today, I'm going to ask you, what's the whole process when making this Galaxy glass? Because I imagine it's a very interesting process that you have to go through to get that type of aesthetic.
Right, and we actually go through like a 10-step process. Hopefully I'll remember them all. But so we cut each piece to length, and that gives me the exact, like each piece is almost the exact weight, but more importantly, it's the right length to start with. I really want to get everything the exact dimensions of all the metal pieces that you would have, so that everything fits well and functions properly. Function is one of my most important aspects of anything that I make.
Okay.
So once we have everything cut to length, we've got to clean it. So we water clean it really well, and then we use a distilled water to clean it after it's been cleaned. Then we'll hit it with alcohol after that to remove any fingerprints or any residue.
Yeah, you just don't want
that
any
you would have
residue
left
on the
over.
outside surface.
Correct. So once we got it perfectly clean, I've got specialty tools that I use, and I will take the piece and I work it in the flame. I'll heat it up, and then I will coat it in silver.
And how do you coat it in silver?
So I'll take a fuming rod with a little piece of silver. Each of these pieces has about 1/100 of a gram.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1/100 of an ounce of silver. So I cut a pretty big chunk of silver.
Okay.
And I will boil it and let the vapors from that boiling silver condense onto the glass.
And that's
that gives
technically what fuming is the
Correct.
condensation of metal vapors
Correct.
onto the glass.
Onto the glass. Once I get that metal vapor, a very thin coating of it, I will go through and selectively burn that fuming off in spots. And that gives us like the nebula-ish looks, and really shows out the huge pieces of silver that get fumed on. And they just kind of stick to the surface, but it will bake those into the surface and really show them off as like the stars in our galaxy.
Right. So if you're touching one of these pieces, you may notice that there's a fine texture on there. That texture isn't dirt or any contamination on the glass. It's actually little bits of pure silver that are embedded and bonded right to the glass.
Right, and when you say pure silver, we use .999 silver. So
Okay.
it's pure silver,
Pure
and
silver.
no impurities in it, the purest that you can buy.
So if the world goes to hell, we can melt down the silver on our Galaxy glass and it'll be worth something.
Correct.
Now, because to get that swirling effect, I imagine you have to constantly be rotating that, not just so that way you get a uniform coloration, but also to prevent any sort of hot spots. Am I correct in that
Right,
assumption?
just like on your cap when you're heating your vap cap,
Right.
you want even heating through the whole piece, and that eliminates some of that stress from hot and cold spots, and it really just gives a better pattern, I find.
Okay.
It's easier to work the piece when it's even.
Nice.
So what's the process after you fume the silver onto it? What else do you have to do to complete one of these?
So then I'll pop the hole so that we have a nice air hole, and I get that sized for maximum efficiency. Then I size both ends so that they'll fit the cap and the mouthpiece.
And how do you size them, Chris?
So I've got a special tool that I use for hot forming them.
Okay.
And I get a preliminary size that I
Okay.
want for later precision honing each piece. So I get both sides prepped for honing,
Okay.
to a very tight tolerance. And then they go back in the oven to anneal for 12 and a half hours.
12 and a half hours.
Yep.
Just chilling out in the
Just
kiln.
Chilling out in the heat, heating up, staying at a temperature, and then coming back down. Then I pull them out, and we precision hone both ends.
Right.
Using a diamond bore, we wet work them.
Right.
So
Using-
we don't create any dust, keep it healthy for everyone working on the piece.
Right. So the inside dimensions of the Galaxy glass bodies and stems are very, very precise.
Correct. They're a very, very close tolerance.
And then what do you do after that, after you complete that?
So after
boring?
it's bored, I put it back in the kiln and we
Okay.
anneal it again to prepare it for its final process, or second final, in which we fire polish the inside.
Okay.
Now that takes care of any like micro cracking that we might get from the
that
honing
diamond,
process.
yeah, from that ream,
Right. It
honing
just
that
kind of
bore.
smooths everything back out. It gives it a nice finished feel.
Okay.
And it also helps on some of the wear that you may get from the O-rings if we left it just
Okay.
that ground surface.
So when you're test fitting and putting the pieces in, let's talk about those O-rings for a second.
Right. So the O-rings, I like to really well lubricate it. Like this has a bunch of lubrication on it already, but keep them well lubricated. And when I take them apart and put them back together, I like to twist it. And I found that the twisting will eliminate the O-ring from slipping on your mouthpiece or your tip.
Okay, cool.
And then what's the final process after you complete that to finish the
So
device?
after it's fire polished, we anneal it one more time,
Okay.
just to make sure any stresses that were caused during the fire polishing are eliminated, and it really gives it that final bake
You kind of
on
set
the
everything.
silver,
Keep it happy.
and just make sure that it's going to be perfect for the customer so that they will have the most durable piece that I can make for them.
Now, with these pieces, I know everyone kind of cleans their glass a little bit differently, and I imagine your step is going to be different than mine.
Right.
What is your personal technique for cleaning these Galaxy Glass pieces?
So my most recent technique is I love drinking buttered coffee with a lot of cream in the morning. I don't really eat breakfast, so that's kind of my breakfast energy. So I will take mine about once a week, and I heat up my coffee. I fill the cup about that full, and then I'll put my cream and butter in, and then pop it in the microwave for a minute. So it gets really hot, like boiling, undrinkably hot. And then I'll stick my piece in the cup and just let it sit there for about 10-15 minutes while I'm getting ready. At which time I come back in, fill my cup back up all the way with coffee, and that's my morning drink.
So do you drink your
One day a
coffee
week.
through your Vap cap like a straw?
You know, you could. And that would, if you do it like every other month, it'll keep the center tube clean. Your condenser tube will be nice and clean.
You'd get some strong effect there, especially if you haven't cleaned your device in a
Right.
while.
And I also find, like, I'm kind of lazy and don't really get it fully cleaned out, so it gives a nice coffee flavor to your first couple bowls. Just a
Okay.
nice little added
Well,
flavor.
I really love that technique. I know you mentioned something similar to that on a previous episode.
Yep.
But for a technique that will work with the Galaxy Glass, our BB9s, or any downstem for a water piece, we actually answer that question on this week's episode of The Snap. Welcome to The Snap. This is the segment where we answer frequently asked questions in a very rapid-fire format. So let's get right into it. For this week's episode of The Snap, we are going to be discussing how to clean your glass items, such as the BB9 stems or the new Galaxy Glass items. All you'll need, some isopropyl alcohol, I recommend 91% or higher, some paper towels, a storage container when you're cleaning, I recommend a plastic bag or the storage tube that your device came in, and some clean water. The first step that you'll want to do is take your glass piece, put it in the bag, add some of your isopropyl alcohol. At that point, you just simply seal up the container or bag and give it a good shake. This can take a couple minutes, depending on how dirty your device is, and that will help clean away all that residue. You can also let it soak for a prolonged period of time if that's how you prefer to clean your device. From this point, I just need to remove it from the bag and rinse it under some clean water or drop it in a cup with some clean water in it. Now we're just rinsing off that stem. This will clear away any of that isopropyl alcohol residue, and then when it's clean, simply remove and set to dry on a paper towel. Now the last step you need to do is simply reassemble your device in your desired configuration. And one little piece of advice too, this will also work with any sort of downstem you have for your glass piece as well. In conclusion, all you need to do to clean your glass items is just some isopropyl alcohol, a storage container such as a baggie or a tube, paper towels, and water, and of course, your dirty glass piece. This will keep your glass looking great for a long time, as well as keeping the flavor at the best and looking the best. And that has been The Snap. I'm Retail Josh, and thanks for watching. And welcome back. Here on your screen, you will see this beautiful gold Galaxy glass. It's a very limited edition, so be sure to get some awesome questions in the chat, and one of you will be a lucky winner of this item. And you, during the break, you were actually having a really interesting discussion regarding the shock absorbency of the Galaxy glass.
Right. So it's not even so much the glass, although the glass is relatively resistant. And I did see a question regarding borosilicate. Pyrex is actually a brand name. Borosilicate is the more technical or scientific name for the type of glass. It's a lot more heat resistant than your typical soda lime glass. So anyway.
Right. It's what you would see in any
scientific
lab.
glass, right, is going to be your borosilicate glass. But when we pair up some of our DynaVap components to a glass body or stem like this, we get some really useful things and features and attributes that you don't get out of a typical glass piece. And one of them is durability. And that durability is created because the mouthpiece is connected to the glass via either a condenser or a Omni mouthpiece and condenser assembly, both of which are mated to the glass through the connection of compression fit O-rings. And these compression fit O-rings then provide a little bit of a shock absorber so that when you drop it, you're either going to land tip first or mouthpiece first, and very rarely is going to land completely flat, which means we now have a way to prevent that glass from coming in contact with a hard, sharp object down there that's going to end up shattering your dreams.
Right. And like I say, I drop mine at least once a day, and I've had it for 6 months now without
Really?
any issues.
Oh, so you've dropped your same piece quite a few times, and
Many times.
you haven't broken the Galaxy.
Correct.
Well, that's good.
It's still
'cause
intact.
I really
For now.
like the Galaxy.
Me too.
And you kind of touched on it before, and I see a really awesome question here from Butter Jesus. And it was, how long does it take to make a Galaxy glass stem? You kind of touched on that, but like total from beginning to end, how long would you say it takes to make one of these?
So probably from beginning to end, we've probably got about 45 hours in each piece.
Right.
From beginning to end of
It's
the
a process. It's like making good cheese. It just takes time.
Right. And it's about a 3 to 4 day process from beginning to end.
Yeah.
With each piece.
So a lot of labor and love goes into each one of these, and they're all going to be a little bit different because they're all handmade.
Right. And because they're all handmade, I also make them all in small batches so that I don't have like a tool that's come out of the wrong, all my tools are carbon, so I could get a tool that would wear down a little
Sure.
bit. I don't want to make hundreds of one piece and have it not fit. So I make everything in small batches. That way you're getting a better piece.
Right.
It's not mass manufactured, mass produced. I'm doing everything in a small batch.
So thank you, Butter Jesus. And that was a really great question. So reach out to Cheryl at DynaVap.com with your information, and we'll send you a Galaxy glass body for you for that question. So let's keep those coming in. I see one from Troy R here.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Will I be able to use this with or without a mouthpiece?
I think we can answer that really easily. We can take this unit here. We can pop out, it's an XL condenser. And if I had a standard condenser, that's an Omni.
Yep. There you go.
So if I had a standard condenser, I could just put it in and it would more or less be like an M. So yes, we don't need a mouthpiece. We can fit a standard condenser in here and this more or less becomes your mouthpiece. We just have everything equipped here this way because I think it makes for a nice contrast having a little bit of silver on either end of the device.
Yeah, so very similar to like if you wanted to hit the standard Hydrovong natively, you might find it a little bit more comfortable using it with the mouthpiece, but it's not a requirement. And so that was a really good one.
And I've also found if you, for whatever reason, lost your mouthpiece and or you just have your tip, if you get the XL, it will be almost the exact same length so that it will still fit in your stash case. So you don't even really need a mouthpiece on it at all. You won't get the condenser, so you won't get quite as cool and maybe smooth
Right.
of a hit, but it's totally usable
Sure.
in that manner.
Just another good example of the modularity and the wide range of configurations that these devices can be put together to really kind of suit just about anyone's needs, wants, or desires.
Right?
Yeah, and Ben Kress has a question regarding the product. With the airport on all the Galaxy Glass stems, they're all going to be raised a little bit, correct? So that way it's
Correct.
easier to find after it clicks.
Right, and you can really, really feel, because it's one of the only textures or bumps on the piece, you can't miss it.
It was done with a whole lot of intent.
Right.
A little bit of feedback that we received, from the BB9 stems is that the airport was difficult to locate. The airport on the original glass VAP caps was protruded, just like these are, specifically for that reason, because it makes it a little bit more tactile, a lot easier to find when you're not looking for it, at least not with your eyes. So it's very easy to look for and to find it with your fingers.
And another visually stunning thing about that hole is it really, to me, looks like a black hole.
Yeah, I saw one comment in there. It looked like a galaxy floating inside a knot in a piece of wood.
Yes,
And so it's a really kind of
definitely.
reminds me a little bit of the silver twig precious metal stem that we had
that's
made.
cool stuff.
And so thank you, Ben, for that question. See another one from Single Jingler. Are you planning on having different colors of the Galaxy Glass or just blue?
So I've been talking a lot with George about incorporating other metals. I think we might keep it on the down low a little bit right now, but we are definitely thinking about making some other metals. With other metals, I found you get a wider variety of colors. This is the one gold one that we made, and if you'll see, you can get a lot more greens and gold, really great gold reflective.
Just a whole bunch of really cool colors. I specifically like how that almost looks like a golden mirror.
Right, and you can actually see your reflection in it. It would be hard to translate through this, but you can see your reflection right in the piece.
So that's an
So that
awesome
pure
question.
gold is awesome.
And so, Single Jingler, you're another winner. You're going to be receiving a Galaxy Glass stem. Shoot your information over to Cheryl@DynaVap.com, and we'll get that out for you.
Why don't you take this next question, Chris? I see you from Lorenzo. What gave you the idea to use silver to create the Galaxy look?
So I've been working with silver for 23 years now in fuming, and I really know, I started fuming the silver over clear,
Okay.
and that as you used it wouldn't really work on this, but as you used the piece, that silver fuming would turn from a yellow into a very cool blue color.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do, and in my thought process was, why not just start with something that's already black?
Okay. So you're not actually fuming the silver onto blue glass.
Correct.
It's
I'm fuming it onto black glass.
onto black glass. So there you have it. It's not even actually blue. The blue is coming from various silver compounds and various thicknesses of that very fine silver fume as it's condensing on the glass.
Right, and the blue is actually the light that's reflecting back at you. Because when you have it on clear, the light will just travel through the clear and it looks yellow.
Isn't that fun?
It's very fun.
All these
I
different
love
colors
optics and science.
and where they come from and how they arrive. Yeah.
And you mentioned doing it on clear. That's kind of a similar process that you did with the Turbo Twist, which you also make.
Correct. Yeah, the Turbo Twist is probably one of my favorites. I wish we had one here. But it really, really helps cool down and just make that flavor from whatever you're smoking come through even better because it's cooler.
And so
And you're able to enjoy the flavor.
when you came up with that design for the Turbo Twist, what was your inspiration? Where did you kind of get the idea to make almost like an artistic but extremely functional glass piece?
So I was actually reading an article in Scientific American. It was just an old one that was sitting around in my studio, and it was talking about the Bernoulli's principle.
Right.
And it's when you take a volume and compress it in a cone, it actually cools down the air. So I was like, why not incorporate that? We're trying to cool things down anyways. why not just incorporate that? And then I had the air hole in it, and I put that at the top, and it just so happened when I drew the air through it, it made like a little tornado in there.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So then on my next one, I directionalized the air going in.
Right.
And then it made even more tornado effect. So I was like, let's put a second one in. And then it was just like a tornado cyclone coming right through that first chamber.
Lots of turbulence, but
Lots of
controlled turbulence.
Correct. And we get the smoke spinning, and then I was like, what would create more turbulence? And so I put a twist in it, and we twist it the other direction.
Okay.
So you actually get air twisting in one direction, and then it abruptly needs to switch directions. So you're going to get even more air mixing and turbulence. And in that second twist, it will actually block any particulate that may occasionally get sucked
So
through.
it functions like a centrifugal filter.
Correct. And especially if anyone's had an issue with concentrates, sometimes you can suck a little concentrate through and burn your tooth or tongue or whatever. It almost 99.9% of the time stops that issue from happening.
Just going to filter them out using a little bit of physics,
Right.
no actual filter.
Correct.
Got to like
And
that.
cooling.
Right.
And I think it's time, too, that we give away this gold one. And I really like that question from Lorenzo Lamas because it really led to some interesting conversation. And so, Lorenzo, reach out to Cheryl at DynaVap, send her your info, and we will get that out to you. I will take a couple more questions before we wrap it up. I see one from Sodas. Can you put a Galaxy glass in the fridge to cool down the vapor, or would that potentially cause the glass to be stressed?
So it will not stress the glass. Please don't put it in the freezer. You don't need a Christmas story issue happening. Just with the metal mouthpiece, if you use the XL and pull the mouthpiece off, the freezer's the place to keep it. You can also just leave the mouthpiece out
Right.
and put that in. But the fridge is an awesome place. It will definitely cool your hits down. We actually keep a mini fridge at the studio just to keep our stuff, our mini rigs in, to keep
Okay.
them cold all
Nice.
the time.
So I see a question here about the Turbo Twist being fumed. So the Turbo Twist is fumed with silver as well.
Correct. It's fumed with silver. Another nice thing about the silver fuming, especially on the Turbo Twist, and especially in Wisconsin during the winter, it's cold and flu season.
Right.
The silver actually has antibacterial properties to it, where it actually eats the bacteria and turns it into silver. So I like it because it will kill the bacteria. If you're passing it back and forth between friends, it's going to be a lot more likely to kill off the germs, and you're going to pass a lot less stuff back and forth.
Well, that's useful.
Yeah, it's
Very useful.
You see that like in health food stores, like the Colloidal Silver. For any of like the computer nerds out there, you'll see people putting little bits of silver in their water reservoir for their liquid cooling. It does definitely have some neat qualities.
Right. And a lot of hospital items will be nano infused with silver just to keep the bacteria off of them. I know I have a digital thermometer that it brags that it's got silver.
And now with the Galaxy Glass and the Turbo Twist, will any of them change color over use?
So the Galaxy will not. The Turbo Twist will turn itself from a yellow piece into a Galaxy.
Provided you don't clean it though, correct?
Provided you don't clean it, correct.
And then I think we answered most of the questions in there. They're going to ask one more from Nicholas Petrus, and this is going to be for you, George. Will the OG Vap Cap ever make a return?
I don't see why not, but I don't exactly know when. Maybe Chris can assist with that. Maybe it'll come back in a slightly modified format, because one of the main reasons we don't see it so much anymore is it was rather thin glass and it wasn't particularly well annealed. It was also very fragile. So for those of you out there that still have an original glass Vap Cap, well, be careful. They
Yeah.
break easily, and you're a diminishing number, because I'm sure that a large percentage of the ones that were out there have now kind of shifted into a state of more than one piece.
Yes, I've seen that a lot
They've
personally.
multiplied.
And so we want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank Ben and Bryce behind the camera, Pranav and Karen helping with the questions. I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on and discussing these awesome pieces with us today.
Yeah, thanks for letting me share it with the
One more
Dynaverse.
good question, Josh.
Oh, yep, take it away, George.
I see another fun question from Biffle Bear. Can a werewolf use a turbo twist, or will it burn their lips?
They would need to cover the mouthpiece in perhaps duct tape with a small hole in it.
So they'd be better off to wear gloves and use a Galaxy Glass.
Correct.
Now, at the same time, if you happen to have a vampire sitting next to you, and you weren't quite sure how to get them out of your house, you could use a turbo twist, or you could take the mouthpiece out and hand them a Galaxy Glass native with just a standard condenser.
Or you could have gotten one of the nice silver mouthpieces that you made. And just pretend like you're being nice to the vampire, hand it off to him, he won't even know what's going on, and you got him.
And so be sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more awesome conversations like this on the next DynaVap Live. And check out our Instagram page if you haven't already. Pranav has been doing some really cool giveaways on there. Do those every week. And remember, if you're ever with a werewolf, just pass them a Galaxy Glass or Turbo Twist and you'll be safe. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. For more videos, click here or here, and don't forget to subscribe.